My brother has always said I hide behind things. Bangs, baggy hoodies, sarcasm, prescription lenses so thick you could probably use them to start a fire. He's one of those people who walks into a room and looks exactly like he meant to be there. Good hair, easy grin, the type of body language that makes strangers think, oh, he must be important. I'm the opposite. I've spent most of my life trying to take up less visual real estate, like if I stood in the right place with the right plain t-shirt on, the world might just blur around me and forget to judge. For years, I told myself I didn't care about that stuff. That fashion was shallow, and confidence was an internal thing, and pretty was a scam. But it's a lot easier to say looks don't matter when everyone sees you as the smart one by default, and you've accepted your fate as the eternal side character. At some point, though, even side characters get tired. The LASIK thing started as a joke. I'd made some comment at a family dinner about how my glasses fog up every time I open the dishwasher, and my brother, Ethan, went, "You know we have lasers now, right? You don't have to live like a Victorian librarian." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, but I felt the jab. Later that night, I Googled LASIK near me and fell down a rabbit hole of testimonials from people whose entire personalities seemed to have changed once they ditched their frames. "I finally feel like myself," one woman wrote under a before and after picture where her before looked eerily similar to me. Round glasses, hunched shoulders, the faint expression of someone who is always bracing for a camera flash. I stared at that for a long time. It bothered me that a medical procedure could be the thing that unlocked her sense of self when I'd been telling myself for years that I just needed to work on my confidence. It also bothered me that I wanted that transformation so badly. But you know what bothers you more than a desire you judge? The thought of staying exactly the same. So I booked the consultation. I didn't tell anyone at first. It felt too vulnerable, like admitting out loud that I wasn't nearly as okay with myself as I'd pretended. The ophthalmologist was alarmingly cheerful, the kind of guy who talks about corneal flaps while you're still taking off your shoes. He ran 1,000 tests, shined lights directly into my soul, and then said, "You're a great candidate," in the same tone you might say, "You won the raffle." My stomach flipped. Great candidate. Translation, we can fix you. I scheduled the procedure for 3 weeks out. I told my mother first. She immediately launched into a hybrid prayer of a lecture about eyes being a trust from God. But once she realised I was serious and had done the research, she softened. My dad shrugged and said, "If it makes your life easier, do it. Just don't go blind," which is possibly the most dad blessing possible. Ethan just whistled and said, "Damn, you're really going for the mainframe, huh?" Those 3 weeks crawled and sprinted at the same time. Once I'd committed, I became hyper-aware of my glasses. Every smudge, every slip down the bridge of my nose during a workout, every moment where rain made little lens galaxies, I catalogued them as exhibits in the case for change. At the same time, panic chewed at me in the quiet moments. What if something went wrong? What if I was the one-in-a-million horror story? What if my glow-up attempt left me worse than before? I think part of me believed I didn't deserve to want it this much. But the day came anyway. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and fake lavender. They gave me a pill to relax, which mostly made my thoughts sound like they were underwater. The actual procedure was weird but not painful. A lot of pressure, some intense lights, a sense that time had been edited into jump cuts. When the surgeon said, "All done," I half expected my vision to snap into HD like in a sci-fi movie. Instead, everything was hazy and goopy, and I felt like someone had installed sand under my eyelids. They taped plastic shields over my eyes and sent me home with enough eye drops to hydrate a desert. The next morning, though, that's when it hit. I sat up in bed, peeled off the shields, and for the first time since I was 12, I could see my ceiling fan clearly without fumbling for glasses. I could read the numbers on my digital clock from across the room. I could see dust motes in the light and the tiny crack near the curtain rod. I cried, partially because my eyes were dry and partially because it felt like I'd been given a cheat code to a game I'd been playing on hard mode. When I walked past the mirror, I almost didn't recognise myself. My face looked exposed, smaller without the frames somehow, but also sharper. Like my features had been waiting their whole lives to not be interrupted by plastic. It didn't magically make me beautiful or anything. My nose was still my nose. My acne scars were still there. But it was me, unfiltered, unhidden. It was terrifying. You know how when people go through something big, they immediately want to change everything else too? That was me, post-LASIK. Suddenly my closet felt like it belonged to someone else, a ghost of the girl who'd decided fashion was for people who didn't spend all day squinting at screens. Oversized t-shirts from college clubs, stretched-out cardigans, jeans that could only charitably be called vintage. I'd always defined my style as comfortable and practical and not trying too hard, but standing there with my newly naked face, all I could see was fear. Fear of being seen as trying and failing, fear of being judged for choosing wrong, fear of being visible. So I did something deeply out of character. I texted Ethan and said, "Can you come shopping with me?" He replied in 0.2 seconds, "Who is this and what have you done with my sister?" Then, yeah, OFK, tomorrow? We met at the mall like teenagers. He showed up in his usual uniform, well-fitted jeans and a t-shirt that somehow looked like it had been ironed by angels. I showed up in my usual uniform too, and watching us walk together in a store window reflection was like looking at before and after shots from a makeover show. Okay, he said, clapping his hands once. Ground rules. You are not allowed to say, I can't pull that off more than 3 times today. You are not allowed to apologise to any mirror. And if you pick up one more grey oversized hoodie, I will set it on fire in the changing room. It was stupid how nervous I was to pick up clothes. Not because I didn't know what looked good on other people. I've spent years scrolling Instagram like everyone else. But because wanting something for myself felt dangerous. But Ethan has this way of making everything feel like a game instead of a test. He pulled things off racks and tossed them at me, a deep green wrap dress that scared me, a pair of high-waisted jeans that looked like they belonged to someone with opinions, a leather jacket that seemed like it hissed too cool for you under its breath. Just try them, he kept saying. You don't have to buy anything, we're just collecting data. In the changing room, I stared at my reflection under the unforgiving fluorescent lights. It was weird seeing my face without glasses in new contexts. My eyes looked bigger, my eyebrows more dramatic. The green dress made my skin tone look alive instead of office printer beige. The jeans made my legs look like they were attached to a grown woman instead of a perpetual grad student. The leather jacket transformed me into someone who might, in some universe, say yes to spontaneous plans after 9 p.m. Each outfit felt like stepping into an alternate version of myself, and it was both intoxicating and sad. Where had she been all this time? Why had I kept her locked up because I was afraid of what, exactly? Failing at being hot. Every time I stepped out to show Ethan, he gave feedback like a stylist mixed with a brother. That cut works. Keep that colour. Ditch that neckline, it's swallowing you. These pants, though? Chef's kiss. He took photos on my phone so I could see myself the way other people might. I almost didn't recognise the girl in those pictures. Not because she looked completely different, but because she looked present. Like she'd walked into the frame on purpose. We left with 2 bags more than I meant to buy. The green dress, the jeans, the jacket, a couple of simple tops that actually fit, even a pair of boots that had a heel. Tiny but still. I carried them out of the mall like they were contraband. The first time I put it all together, the new eyes, the new clothes, was a week later. Our cousin was having a birthday dinner, and normally I'd show up in something safe and tuck myself near the drinks table. I stood in front of my mirror for a long time, chewing my lip, my bed covered in old faithful clothes. The new stuff hung there like a dare. I could already hear the phantom comments. Oh, look who's trying now. Got a date? Who are you dressing up for? Shame flared in my chest at the idea of being caught wanting to look good. But then I remembered the woman in the LASIK testimonial and the line about finally feeling like herself, and I thought, how long am I going to keep living my life based on what imaginary peanut galleries might say? So I put on the green dress, the boots, the jacket. I did my hair in something other than a ponytail, a swipe of eyeliner, a bit of lip colour, not full glam, but definitely more than my usual washed face and vibes. When I stepped back, my heart actually jumped. Not because I looked like a model or anything, that would be a lie, but because I looked like I'd stopped hiding. Ethan was picking me up. When he texted outside, my stomach knotted. I grabbed my bag, took one last look at the mirror, and forced myself not to adjust anything. Walking down the stairs of my building felt like walking into a spotlight I had turned on myself. When I opened the passenger door and slid in, Ethan did a full sitcom double take. Holy shit, he said, which is brother code for I approve. You look different. My immediate instinct was to deflect, to say, is it too much? Or I'll change, but I bit my tongue. Good different? I asked instead, trying to sound casual while my pulse pounded in my ears. He grinned. Yeah, really good different. We were halfway to the restaurant when he said it. He was tapping the steering wheel along to some song on the radio, glancing at me at stoplights like he was still getting used to this version of me. Then he laughed under his breath and said, You know your new look is going to ruin your life, right? I blinked. What? He smirked, eyes still on the road. I'm serious. After LASIK and those clothes, people are going to start treating you completely differently. Guys, obviously, but also, Mom, your co-workers, random strangers. You're not ready for that kind of attention. I get attention, I said, stung. Not like this, he replied. You're about to find out how annoying it is to be noticeable. Trust me, once they clock you as pretty, they project all their bullshit on you. They assume things about your personality, your dating life, your everything, and they'll notice when you walk in a room and when you don't. He shrugged. Your invisibility shield is broken, sis. That's what I mean by ruin your life. There's no going back. I laughed it off in the moment, rolled my eyes, called him dramatic, but his words lodged somewhere under my ribs, humming. I thought he was being overprotective or teasing, like older brothers do. I didn't know yet that he was, in his own clumsy way, warning me. Because he was right about one thing. After that night, people did start treating me differently. And for a while it felt like everything I'd ever wanted, right up until it didn't. Ethan's warning didn't truly sink in until the moment we walked into the restaurant for our cousin's birthday dinner. I've been going to these gatherings my whole life, and normally my arrival barely registers. Maybe a wave from an aunt, a distracted smile from a cousin, a seat saved near the end of the table where I could quietly exist without being the centre of anyone's attention. But this time, something in the room shifted the second I stepped in behind Ethan. It was subtle at first, like a soft ripple moving across the surface of a pond when a pebble drops in. Not a splash, not dramatic, but a ripple that changes the entire reflection. Heads turned, not sharply, not rudely, but in that instinctive human way when something unexpected enters the frame. People stared for a second too long, trying to place me, trying to reconcile their memory of the quiet girl with glasses, with the woman standing there now in a deep green dress, leather jacket, boots with a small confident heel, and eyes that suddenly stood out like dark, sharp punctuation marks. My aunts blinked rapidly, their expressions somewhere between confused and impressed. My cousins straightened up and grinned like they were seeing a plot twist they hadn't been prepared for. One of them, a girl who's always been effortlessly stylish, actually stood up from her chair and said, "Oh, my God, you look amazing," with the kind of emphasis usually reserved for celebrity sightings. Even my mother, who has mastered the art of the neutral parental response, looked at me with wide, startled eyes before recovering and saying, "Wow, you look so bright today," as if brightness was something a person could just suddenly switch on. My father's reaction was exactly the kind that cuts without meaning to. "Wow, didn't know you could look like this," said jokingly, but landing like a revelation he didn't think I had been capable of. I laughed it off, because that's what daughters do. Absorb impact and smile anyway. For the first half hour, I tried to enjoy the novelty of being noticed. Compliments drifted toward me like confetti. "You look so refreshed. What a glow up. Those clothes really suit you." It felt good, intoxicating even, to be visible in a way I had never been before. When someone takes a picture and you look at it later without flinching, without the urge to crop your face or delete the evidence, it does something to your brain. It makes you feel like maybe you weren't imagining your own potential this whole time. Maybe you really had been hiding behind frames and oversized fabrics and layers of insecurity. Maybe this new version of you was the one you were supposed to be all along. But attention, I learned quickly, is double-edged. Somewhere between dessert and leaving, the shift started to sour. Ethan was talking to one of our cousin's husbands, Mark, a guy who's always leaned a little too hard into frat boy humour, even though he's well past 35. I was standing close enough to hear him say, "Dude, your sister looks so different tonight. If I didn't know better." And he waggled his eyebrows in that gross, suggestive way men do when they think they're being funny, but what they're actually being is disrespectful. Ethan's expression changed instantly. His whole face hardened, his eyes narrowing just a fraction, his jaw clenching. I had never seen him look like that at a family gathering. "Shut up," he muttered under his breath, low enough not to cause a scene but sharp enough to cut. Mark laughed it off, pretending innocence, but the moment left a sour, metallic taste in the air. It was the first time I felt the other side of visibility, the entitlement, the assumptions, the way some people feel more comfortable making inappropriate comments when they think someone has stepped across the threshold of attractive enough to objectify. On the drive home, Ethan was quiet, tense in a way that made my stomach twist. I finally asked, "Are you okay?" And he let out a breath like he'd been holding it since the restaurant. "That's exactly what I was talking about," he said. "People are stupid. You give them one visual change and suddenly they think they're allowed to rewrite who you are." He wasn't yelling or lecturing, just speaking with this weary kind of frustration, the kind that comes from seeing something happen before and knowing how it ends. I tried to brush it off, telling him Mark was just being gross, that it was a one-off thing, but he shook his head. "It won't stop with him. You have no idea how different people treat you when they decide you're attractive. They project things on you, attitudes, intentions, stories. They build a whole version of you in their heads that has nothing to do with who you actually are." I wanted to disagree. I wanted to be optimistic, to believe the compliments were just compliments and not the prelude to something more complicated. But a part of me, the part that had always walked through the world unnoticed, felt something cold and instinctive settle in my chest. Ethan, for all his bluntness, wasn't usually wrong. The ripple didn't stop at the restaurant. It followed me into the next week like a shadow. At work, co-workers who barely acknowledged me before suddenly engaged in long conversations. "You look so awake lately," one said. Another leaned in too close to look at my eyes, saying, "Wow, LASIK really suits you." My boss, who usually addressed me with the clipped efficiency of someone speaking to a printer, laughed at a joke I made. The barista at my cafe, who had gotten my name wrong for 2 years, suddenly remembered it every morning. I should have been flattered. Instead, it felt strange, like people didn't see me so much as the idea of me, the polished version, the upgraded model. Then came the photos from the family dinner. My cousins posted them, and Instagram did what Instagram does, blew up with comments. "Is this really her? Such a glow-up. She looks like a different person. Damn, LASIK hit different. Why didn't she dress like this before?" And of course the comment that gutted me quietly, "She wasn't pretty before." Compliments that double as insults, my specialty. By midweek, the pressure started to feel like a physical weight. Before, I could leave the house in old jeans and a hoodie and no one noticed. Now, it felt like any day I didn't look new me would be judged as a regression. I found myself checking mirrors constantly, worrying about how I appeared to the world, trying to maintain a standard I'd accidentally set. It was exhausting being someone people now expected something from. You don't realise how much safety there is in invisibility until it's gone. But the moment everything clicked, the moment Ethan's warning fully detonated, came at work one Thursday afternoon. I was in the break room making tea when Kevin walked in. Kevin, the office flirt. Kevin, the guy who thinks every woman wants his attention. Kevin, who had never once made eye contact with me before unless he needed help with a spreadsheet. He leaned against the counter with a smirk and said, "You look really good lately." I gave a polite nod. "Thanks." He stepped closer. "I mean, really good." I stepped sideways, pretending to reach for a spoon. He chuckled. "I always thought you were cute." He lied so casually it felt practiced. Before I could respond, he added, "But now you've got this whole new thing going on." His eyes dragged downward in a way that made my skin crawl. "Kevin," I said, warning in my tone. He smirked. "Just saying, if you're finally putting yourself out there, I'm not complaining." I left the room shaking, angry, disgusted, but mostly something deeper. Violated in a way that didn't involve touch, but invaded boundaries all the same. That was the moment something in me snapped awake, because the truth hit me like a slap. LASIK hadn't made people see me. It had made them see a version of me that existed in their heads, their fantasies, their projections, their assumptions. And suddenly I understood Ethan's warning down to the bone. There is a cost to visibility, and mine had just started collecting interest. What I didn't know yet was that the people who had crossed the biggest line weren't strangers, co-workers, or flirty idiots. It would be someone much closer, someone I trusted, someone who should have known better, and that was the moment my glow-up became a threat. The weekend after the incident with Kevin, I stayed home and tried to shrink back into myself, like maybe if I hid long enough, the world would forget the upgraded version of me it had invented. But identity, once cracked open, doesn't fit neatly into the old container anymore. Every time I caught my reflection, in the microwave door, in the darkened TV screen, in the bathroom mirror, I saw someone I didn't fully know yet. Someone bolder, sharper, someone who had tasted a version of visibility she didn't hate, but also didn't entirely trust. My phone buzzed intermittently with messages from cousins, co-workers, acquaintances who suddenly felt entitled to weigh in on my transformation. "You should try this eyeliner. You should cut your hair. You should get contacts permanently. You should start wearing heels more." And the most telling one, "You should post more selfies now." Everyone suddenly had opinions on my body, my face, my clothes, my choices, as if my glow-up had somehow opened the floodgates for unsolicited advice. It was dizzying how easily the world switched from ignoring me to critiquing me. I kept thinking, is this what pretty people deal with every day? How do they survive this constant commentary? How do they not lose themselves? But the real storm didn't hit until Sunday. My family was hosting a barbecue at my parents' place, one of those gatherings with too much food, too many opinions, and the smell of grilled chicken embedded into your clothes for hours afterward. I wasn't planning on going. I wanted quiet. I wanted a break from being observed, but Mom texted me a guilt-laced message. "Come for an hour, Beta, just 1 hour." And guilt is the oldest leash my family ever handed me. So I went. I told myself I would dress down, keep it simple, send a message that the glow-up hype needed to calm down. But even my dress down now looked different. My new jeans fit properly, my hair was shiny from the products Ethan recommended, and with my glasses gone, my face just naturally read as more intentional. I wasn't even trying, but the new version of me showed up anyway. The moment I reached the backyard, the staring started again. Not malicious, just curious. People tilt their heads slightly when they're recalibrating someone. It's subtle but constant. My aunt hugged me too tightly and said, "Look at you. Someone's been taking care of herself." My uncle added, "If only you looked like this during weddings. Maybe you'd be married by now." And everyone laughed like it wasn't a dagger wrapped in humour. I was used to those comments, but they hit differently now because suddenly people felt like their jokes had permission to go deeper. Like once I crossed into attractive territory, I was fair game for every stereotype, every projection, every expectation. Women eyed me with this silent appraisal, some approving, some threatened, some suspicious. Men who never spoke to me before tried to strike up conversations, their smiles a little too long, their compliments a little too pointed. I felt like a new fish dropped into an overcrowded tank. Everyone wanted to sniff, poke, categorize. But the worst moment, the moment everything cracked open, happened with someone I never expected. My brother's best friend, Aaron. He's been around our family since we were teenagers. He's basically an unofficial sibling, always at our house, always making jokes, always borrowing food or tools or advice. We've never been close, not in a personal way, but we've always had that familiar, comfortable, teasing dynamic. He's the guy who'd ruffle my hair and say, "Move, gremlin," when I blocked the fridge. The guy who'd laugh at my sarcastic comments. The guy who once helped me carry a broken bookshelf up 4 flights of stairs without complaining. He'd always treated me like Ethan's harmless, nerdy little sister, until that day. He showed up late, wearing sunglasses and carrying a six-pack. He looked relaxed, casual, the same as always. But when he spotted me, he stopped walking, stopped mid-step. His expression shifted, slow, assessing, surprised in a way that made my skin crawl. Holy, he muttered under his breath, his eyes flicking from my hair to my face to my outfit, and then back up again. This is new. I forced a smile. LASIK, I said, as if that explained everything. He stepped closer, too close, and smiled in a way I had never seen directed at me before. LASIK did more than fix your vision, huh? I laughed awkwardly. I guess. He tilted his head. No guessing. You know. Something in his tone made Ethan look over sharply from the grill. A frown settled between his eyebrows. Aaron didn't notice, or didn't care. He leaned in slightly and said, "If this is what you've been hiding under those glasses the whole time, you've been robbing the world." I froze. I didn't know how to respond to that. Half compliment, half accusation, fully inappropriate. "Don't," Ethan said suddenly, appearing beside us with a pair of tongs still in his hand. His voice was flat, cold, the same tone he'd used with Mark, but sharper. "Don't talk to her like that." Aaron raised his eyebrows, amused. "Relax, man. I'm complimenting her." "That wasn't a compliment," Ethan snapped. "That was creepy." Aaron scoffed. "She's an adult. She can handle someone telling her she looks good, right?" He turned to me, waiting for me to validate him. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat had gone tight. I hated that silence. I hated that expectation. I hated how suddenly the dynamic had shifted into something where I was supposed to choose between protecting my brother's peace or protecting my own boundaries. Ethan stepped in front of me slightly, like a shield. "Stop talking," he said. Aaron laughed. "Oh, come on. Since when are you her bodyguard?" "Since she got LASIK and people forgot how to behave," Ethan shot back. My mother, sensing tension, hurried over and tried to diffuse things with her usual soft panic. "What's happening? Why are you arguing?" Aaron shrugged. "Nothing, just saying she looks beautiful. Didn't know that was a crime." Beautiful. Not pretty, not nice. Beautiful. And it wasn't the word that terrified me. It was the intent behind it, the insinuation, the entitlement. My mother placed a hand on my arm. "Oh, Beta," she said sweetly. "Don't be shy. He's just teasing." And that's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. My family would not protect me from this. They thought this was harmless, normal, expected. A new glow meant new boundaries. New boundaries meant new wars. And everyone around me had decided the wars were my responsibility. The rest of the barbecue passed in a haze. I stayed near Ethan or my mother the entire time. Every time I caught Aaron's eyes drifting toward me, I tensed. Every time someone else complimented me in a way that felt too heavy, too intense, I felt myself shrink just a little again, ironically becoming smaller in the exact moment the world had decided I was big enough to scrutinize. When I finally got home that evening, I sat on my couch in the dark for a long time, replaying the day over and over. I thought about Kevin in the break room. I thought about the stares at the restaurant. I thought about the Instagram comments. I thought about Aaron's voice saying, "You've been robbing the world." I thought about Ethan stepping between us like he had been preparing for this moment his entire life. Then I thought about all the years I spent invisible, whining about it, resenting it, feeling lesser because of it, and how bitterly ironic it was that now visibility was its own kind of prison. I realized something that night. I had changed. The world had not. People didn't treat me differently because they respected me more. They treated me differently because they desired me more. And desire, in the wrong hands, has nothing to do with respect. I used to think hiding was weakness. Now I wondered if hiding had been safety. I didn't want to go back to my old self. I didn't want to shrink again. I didn't want to undo the confidence I was just beginning to feel. But I also didn't want to become someone who had to constantly guard her space, fight for her boundaries, justify her right to exist without being objectified. I spent weeks navigating that conflict, falling in and out of discomfort, trying to build a new identity from scratch without losing the old me in the process. I learned to say no more sharply. I learned to hold eye contact without apologizing for it. I learned to block men online without explaining myself. I learned to value the people who treated me the same before and after. But the biggest revelation came much later, when Ethan and I were having dinner again, and I asked him quietly, "Is this what life is like for women who are considered attractive?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared at his plate, then looked up at me with a sad sort of understanding. "It shouldn't be," he said. "But yeah, this is the tax." "The tax?" I repeated. "The visibility tax," he said. "You gain power, but you lose anonymity. People assume things. People expect things. People feel entitled to you. And men, some men, will cross lines without even realizing their lines. You can't control them. You can only control how you protect yourself." "So what do I do now?" I asked. He shrugged. You learn to live with both truths, that it's okay to glow up, and it's also okay to admit the glow is brighter than you expected. And you learn how to be seen, without letting people rewrite who you are. I thought about that for a long time. I'm still thinking about it, honestly. The glow up didn't ruin my life, it didn't magically fix it either. But it did force me to confront a world I'd only ever observed from the sidelines. And if I'm being honest, I'm still learning how to stand in the light without letting it burn.